Today we're going to look at the chapters 6 through 10 in Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Let's start with chapter 6, The Funeral. Now Tom and the other boys were enjoying being pirates back in chapter 5. They went swimming and ate more bacon, but now they began to get homesick. They missed their families. In the distance, they heard people looking for them, so they were happy the boys felt loved. That night, Tom went home to see how his Aunt Polly was doing. From a window, Tom listened to Aunt Polly tell another woman how much she missed Tom. Tom felt so loved that he began to cry. So, Tom went back to the island and told the boys, and the boys felt loved and missed. Now, on Sunday, the boys decided to go home. At the church, they found everyone attending the boys' funerals. They thought the boys had died. Everybody was happy to see them. They felt loved. Now, would you be happy to see Tom again? Chapter 7 is called Tom Sawyer, Hero of the Court and Classroom. At school, now Tom was a hero. All the boys wanted to be him, and the girls were flirting with Tom. Tom decided to ignore Becky and talk with Amy. She tried making Tom jealous by talking with another boy, but it didn't work. She began to cry. Remember, Tom is a hero. Tom did feel bad about what he did, though. He tried to apologize to Becky, but she did not forgive him. Becky went back to class. Now alone in the classroom, she decided to look at the teacher's secret book. Tom caught Becky, and she ran away. Then the teacher found out that someone tore his book. He asked Becky if she did it, but Tom took the blame. Now Tom and Huck were beginning to feel bad about Muff being in jail. They swore again not to tell anyone what they'd seen at the graveyard, but they felt bad for Muff. They went to the jail to see him and to give him things he needed. Muff still thought he killed Dr. Robinson. At Muff's trial, everyone in town went to the courtroom. Everyone still thought Muff did the crime. Then Muff's lawyer called Tom to the stand to talk about what had happened at the graveyard. Muff's lawyer questioned Tom, and he said that he was at the graveyard that night. Tom was fixing to tell the truth. He was going to tell everyone that Injun Joe was the one who committed the crime. But before he could, Injun Joe jumped out of the window. Tom was a hero. Chapter 8 is The Haunted House. Once again, Tom was a hometown hero. Everybody loved him. Still, he didn't feel safe. With Injun Joe out there, he had bad dreams. Now, to get his mind off of Injun Joe, Tom and Huck decided to go on a treasure hunt. They decided to go to a haunted house. They wanted to look for treasure. The haunted house was filled with weeds, and it looked like it was falling apart. So Tom and Huck were nervous. When checking upstairs for treasure, the two men entered the house. One of the men was Injun Joe in disguise. Injun Joe told the other man to watch the house while he slept. And after Injun Joe woke up, he told the other man that they needed to bury the money they had. The two started to dig inside the house while Tom and Huck watched. The men hid a box and found that it was filled with gold. Now remember, Tom and Huck wanted to look for treasure. Tom and Huck watched the men decide what to do about the treasure. Finding Tom and Huck's shovels, the men decided to take the gold to Injun Joe's hideout. While Tom and Huck returned home, sad that they did not have a chance to get the gold. They should have left their shovels outside. Chapter 9, Lost in the Cave, Injun Joe's hideout. So Tom and Huck looked everywhere for Injun Joe's hideout. While Huck looked, Tom went to Becky's party. At the party, the children went to McDougal's cave, and after exploring, the children went back to the cave's entrance. When everybody was out, everyone realized that Tom and Becky were missing. So for 3 days, everybody looked for Tom and Becky. Now on the first day, Tom and Becky went through the cave. Becky loved the waterfalls. Now during their walk, they found bats in the cave, which scared Becky. Tom decided it was time to go home, but he couldn't remember the way out. Things did not look familiar to Tom, and he got scared. Becky and Tom were lost, and Becky started to cry because Tom and Becky were missing. So Tom went exploring by himself and found a dark hole in the cave. Then someone grabbed his arm. It was Injun Joe. Tom was very scared, so he ran away and went to find Becky. And then Tom found a hole in the cave. They could go home. Tom found Becky, and they found the hole to get out of the cave. Everyone was happy to see Becky and Tom. When they got home, they both were sick from being so hungry and cold. But when they got better, Tom visited Becky's father. He was a judge. Becky's father asked if Tom would go back to the cave, and he said of course he would. Becky's father said that he locked the cave so no one could get in, but Tom said Injun Joe was in that cave. And then Chapter 10, The Fate of Injun Joe and the Treasure. When Becky's father opened the cave door, the crowd of people found Injun Joe's body. He was on the floor of the cave. He had tried to open the door with his knife, and he was so hungry that he ate bats and candles. So Tom felt sorry for Injun Joe. When Tom met up with Huck, Tom told Huck he knew where the gold was in the cave. So Tom and Huck went back to the cave and found Injun Joe's secret spot. The boys took their shovels and found several bags of gold in the dirt. The boys were happy. Wouldn't you be happy if you found that much gold? Everyone was surprised about how much gold the boys found. They found $12,000. That was a lot of money back then. Now the widow Douglas decided that Huck needed a home, and she adopted him. So after a few days, Huck ran away. But Tom was able to find him. Tom begged for him to go back home, but Huck did not want to. He enjoyed being on his own too much. He didn't have to ask to go fishing or ask to do anything. Now Tom tried to talk Huck into coming back home. He told Huck that he could not join his gang of robbers if he was not educated like him. Wanting to be in Tom's gang, Huck decided to go back home with Tom. Now that's our story about Tom Sawyer. If you want to read more about Tom and Huck, you have to read the next story, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Thanks so much for stopping by to read chapters 1 through 10 with me. If you've missed chapters 1 through 5, it's in a previous video. If you could like and comment and tell me what else you'd like to hear from me, please let me know. And if you like the channel, please subscribe. Thanks for stopping by.